Merry meet and welcome to Festival Fun on Witchcraft TV, where we talk about paganism, witchcraft, spiritual festivals, conventions, and other gatherings. These events are a wonderful way to learn about magical practices, to participate in rituals, and meet like-minded people. It's a whole lot of fun. With your host, A.C. Fisher and Harold Sanford Carter III. Welcome to Festival Fun.
Yay!
Hey, welcome and merry me. For the next 3 months, we're going to be talking about HexFest, which is a weekend of witchery. It's an in-person festival located in New Orleans, and it's presented by Warlocks Incorporated, Brian Kane and Christian Day, and it runs from August 8th through the 10th, 2025. HexFest is all about New Orleans with the ambiance of the Crescent City and the Mississippi Delta. Participants stay in the historic, luxurious Bourbon Orleans Hotel. I'm so jealous. And they enjoy such activities as a riverboat cruise and ritual, tours of the historic French Quarter, and plenty of time to go shopping, especially at the Hex store. The festival itself has classes and workshops presented by notable witches, root workers, voodoo priests and priestesses, and conjure workers. So register now to attend HexFest 2025. We are going to meet with one of the HexFest presenters today. So merry meet and welcome to the Festival Fun Show here on Witchcraft TV. So we are going to talk with our very accomplished, amazing guest, Christina Wilke-Burbach. Am I pronouncing that?
Yes, very good.
Excellent. PhD from Sheboygan, Wisconsin. That I know I'm pronouncing right because we have a Sheboygan here in Michigan too.
Yes, you do.
So, to introduce Dr. Christina, she is an ordained minister, a transpersonal psychologist, a master gardener and herbalist, host of the podcast called Garden Goth, author of the Gray Paranormal, or for the Gray Paranormal magazine, and an author of a series of books on death and dying, which are going to be coming out later this year. The first one, the title is excellent. It's called Gardens for Ghosts. And if that wasn't enough, Dr. Christina is a psychic medium, a death doula, and a death walker or a psychopomp. So welcome, Dr. Christina.
Thank you very much for having me. I gotta say, I love your introduction music. I really like that.
Harold does that music.
I was dancing backstage.
Cool. So first of all, I would like you to please help us and help viewers to understand the terms death doula and death walker and psychopomp. What do those mean?
That's a really great question because I think a lot of people have heard of the term death doula in particular. And I think a lot of people associate that with someone who is with people who are actively dying, which is absolutely something death doulas can do. But I think death doulas, there's a really large umbrella of what a death doula may do. And it's so much more than just being there present with someone as they're actively passing away, which is incredibly important. But so are things before they die and after they die. So I think there's different aspects of being a death doula. And I think death doulas oftentimes people who are like interested in hospice or volunteer for hospice or hospice nurses often get associated with death doulas, but death doulas in general are non-healthcare end-of-life professionals. And I think they don't take the place of hospice. I think they complement hospice really well. First of all, like hospice nurses are just incredible humans.
Yeah.
I think that I would call them like angels on earth for, some of the things that they do. It's a very difficult job. And I think people don't choose to be in hospice or death doulas or end of life care. I think it chooses them. And so like hospice nurses come and do like palliative care, like provide medications and do the medical type of stuff. And then death doulas, I think, can pick up the slack and do a lot of spiritual aspects with the death and dying process, like end of life review, working on forgiveness or any loose ends that need to be tied up. They can do a lot of the social elements. You know, just because people are near death doesn't mean they still don't have a need for socializing. So death doulas can take people shopping, depending on how mobile and healthy and so far they so forth. And they can do things that a hospice nurse wouldn't do. A big thing that I think is really important as a death doula that I talk to a lot of my clients about is if you're a witch or into magic or occult, what are you going to do with your magical tools? Who's going to get them? Because if your family is not so much into the occult or magic, they're going to throw that shit in the garbage when you pass away. So I'm a big, proponent or supporter of put the stuff in your will. Or, we need to make sure we dedicate our magical tools, our oracle cards, our paranormal tools to someone when we pass away. Otherwise, it's just going to get thrown away. So death doulas pre-death can help people, like, what are your cemetery plans? Like, where do you want your final disposition to be? What are your funeral home plans? Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be a full, a green burial? Do you want to be a casket? So they can help people make those sort of arrangements, help them do a will, a living will. Who's your power of attorney? Like when I work with people, I focus a lot on the pre-death, like planning for your death to make it easier on both yourself and your loved ones. So what do you want your funeral to look like? I always give people homework. You need to have a will. It's very, very important to have a will, especially if you own property or have things that are of value. You need to have your cemetery planning done. Like where do you want your final resting place to be? You need to do your funeral home planning. You need to have a power of attorney, particularly a durable power of attorney. But then you need to have all this information somewhere where your loved ones can find it when you pass away. And I think it's so important to do this pre-planning before you pass away, especially if you're a witch or a magician, because if you don't put the stuff in writing and pre-plan it, and when you pre-plan it, those in the cemetery and funeral home industry have to carry out your wishes. A lot of our families are maybe Christians and might bury you in a Christian cemetery or, embalm you if that's against your wishes. I see it every day, like working in death care. If people don't put their stuff in writing, especially if they're of a marginalized, group, not just witches, but also LGBTQ, like put your stuff in writing and make it legal, get it notarized, go see a lawyer so your wishes can be fulfilled. I also, like on the pre-death aspect, death doulas can help people work on like forgiveness. I, as a death doula, do a lot of past life regressions. Like, let's go back and take a look at things that might be unresolved from past lives that you brought into this life, and let's try to understand it, resolve it, so you don't bring that into your next lifetime. So I do a lot of like metaphysical stuff as a death doula, which I think, yes, I think death doulas tend to be more spiritual and metaphysical than the hospice professionals. But I think the metaphysical aspects are not addressed enough. I'll do soul retrievals with people as, prior to death to help them get back the pieces of their soul that might be missing or scattered across the universe. Help people do like life reviews, legacy projects, get their ducks in a row per se. And then there's death doulas that are like, oh yeah, it really is. Yeah, I'm a planner, so you can plan every aspect of your life, including your death. So, and that's something I'm a big advocate for. I think the more you have things planned ahead of time, just the easier it is, and your loved ones can focus on remembering you and grieving you instead of where is this money going to come from? What are their wishes? What do they want? We don't even know. Right. And then death doulas in the active process of dying, like hold vigil and are there as someone holding space as they're actively passing away. And then like right after death, helping them cross over to the spirit world, so they're not stuck on the earth plane, unwinding energy, like cleaning up and closing the chakras so they can't come back to their body, or they're not still attached to their body. And then death doulas also can be very involved in after the death, funerals, home funerals. Working in the death care industry, I know a lot of funeral directors really dislike the death doula movement, because death doulas are taking a lot of the power back from funeral directors and putting it with the family. There's definitely a trend for family orientated and family directed funerals, which funeral directors get very competitive over because they think you're taking their business away from them. Yes, it's all about money. but like death doulas can help families do home funerals, do home wakes. Like that's the way it always was up until about 100 years ago. We had our funerals and our wakes in our homes, and the family was involved. And I don't think a lot of people realize you don't need to call the coroner, the medical examiner for 24 hours after someone passes away. So a death doula can help a family spend that time right after death, cleaning their loved one, washing their loved one, blessing their loved one, just being there. So death doulas can do a lot before, during, and after death. And I think society just often thinks of death doulas like they're actively dying, but there's so much they can do as a death doula. And then a death walker, and I'm not sure how many people have heard of this term unless you're like actively in the like death doula or magical.
It was brand new to me. I knew what a psychopomp was, but
okay,
I didn't know what a death walker is.
So a psychopomp is often associated with death, but really can be associated with birth or any life transition. A psychopomp is a soul guide, and that comes from, it's a Greek term in Greek mythology. So just popping in my head, an example of a psychopomp would be like the Valkyries. When someone passes away, they take them to Valhalla. So there's psychopomps in all different mythologies. So a psychopomp is a soul guide. So they can bring you into this world when you're born. If you're going through like major life transitions, like a spiritual awakening or psychic awakening, or starting a new job, or having a child of your own, or moving, they can guide you in like large, big events in your life that they're often can be present for. But then they're also there when your soul transitions from the mundane world into the spiritual world. So is a psychopomp. So a death walker, and this is really, so like my specialty is the dead, working with dead bodies. That sounds so crude. working with the dead, working with souls of the dead. So a death walker can kind of be in the same realm as like a medium, but there's a striking difference where mediums bring souls to them, like conjure souls to them to communicate. A death walker goes to the souls, goes to the spirit world. So kind of some of the techniques of a death walker might be like astral projection or journeying into the spirit world. So I go to them. And why would I go to a soul? Often they're stuck. They're earthbound. A lot of the ones, so like a large part of my psychology career has been working in addiction. So when people overdose and die, when people have accidents, when they suicide, then sometimes they don't realize they're dead and they're confused and they're earthbound. So a death walker can go to the spirit world and communicate with them. Hey, let them know they're dead, give them their options. And because they don't, they have free will too. They don't have to cross over, but give them their options and encourage them to cross over into the spirit world. So death walkers go to the spirits. They go to the different realms of the astral world and the spirit plane, etc.
We could have used you a while ago because we bought this old wood stove, an old wood cook stove, and it had a spirit attached to it. And she wanted to cross. She was Christian. She wanted to go to heaven, but she thought that she had done sinful things in her life and wasn't really ready to transition. And, we'd always smell food cooking. And eventually she felt comfortable enough to leave, but it would have been helpful had we had somebody like you to help her transition.
Sometimes I think people, like I know some people that have spirits in their homes or objects with attachments, and people just get used to it and think, oh, we'll just cohabitate. No, they're not supposed to be here though. They're supposed to cross over. They're supposed to go to the spirit world and then start their journey of reincarnation and all that all over again. So when they get stuck, I think we stop their immortal soul journey.
Right, right. And she
And
wasn't like spooky or dangerous or icky or anything. She was just there, but I could sense she didn't want to be.
yeah, and sometimes they don't know, like they don't know that they're dead. They don't know how to cross over. They're just confused
Mhm.
and stuck, especially if they've been there a while. They just don't know any other way.
Well, this is the wood stove is from the 1930s, so right
I,
from that
that's
long.
very cool. I
Yeah.
love to go thrift shopping and antiquing, and I think
Mhm.
so many objects probably have attachments and people don't even realize it.
Right,
So
right.
because people
Um,
get very attached to their objects. People don't also want to cross over if they're very materialistic. Like
oh, right.
my grandfather, when he passed away, had a hard time crossing over because he built his home, and his home was very beautiful, and he loved his home and was so proud of it. And he didn't want to cross over when he passed away because he was very connected to his home. So when people are connected to material possessions, I work in a cemetery. When people feel guilty for leaving their family members, they don't want to cross
Right.
over. So I think this happens more often than people realize, where spirits kind of stay stuck almost in a limbo.
I've also heard of ones that want to be kind of controlling. Is like, I don't want to leave my family alone. They won't be able to function without me. So that was another reason.
Families too can keep their loved ones stuck here. So like what comes to mind is I know a mother and a daughter, and her daughter passed away. The daughter, so the granddaughter, the daughter passed away of a rare childhood cancer when she was like 10 years old.
Mhm.
And the family was just so consumed with grief and guilt. They took all these classes to become mediums themselves. But every single weekend, whenever there was a spirit fair or psychic fair, they would go and have a reading with every single psychic there. So they kept her stuck here by constantly having readings to talk to
Mhm.
her.
Poor
So,
thing.
so I think
Oh,
we can keep people stuck with their guilt too.
yeah, yeah. So in your work, at your ministry, and that includes helping like facilitate communication between the souls of the dead and the living. What all does that entail?
Oh, that's so wonderful. That's a really wonderful question. So I am a transpersonal psychologist, which is, for lack of a better word, a spiritual psychologist or a psychologist that focuses on above and beyond the ego. So a big part of like communicating between family and their loved ones in spirit is empowering the loved ones that they can communicate with their loved ones in spirit, and their loved ones are always around. A lot of people, and I'm real big with this, a lot of people, are not very confident in their psychic abilities. I think we all have them. I think every single person is intuitive, whether they realize it or not. I think they shut it down with their own lack of confidence and their own disbelief. I'm like, oh, I can't do that. I need to go to someone else to do it. And then, or other people think they're crazy, like, oh, I'm just mentally ill, or I'm making this up. So a big part of my like facilitating communication is empowering and teaching the family like you can do this. You don't need me. You don't need a gatekeeper. You can directly communicate with spirit yourself. Um, Otherwise, I think another way to answer your question is I find, especially with grief work, that people being able to have messages passed to them from their loved ones that they're okay, they're happy, they're in a good place, they're still around, they're still watching them, can do so much for helping to ease grief. Passing along those messages in that way.
We have a question from
Yeah.
Fire Jewel Howard, who
Marry me,
asks,
fire.
what is your opinion of the idea that going to reincarnate is actually a trap and that souls have the option to not be in that trap?
Oh, that is a big thing that I'm seeing. Like, don't go towards the light. Don't go towards the light. It's a trap. Especially, like, I don't know if you've heard of Dolores Cannon. So Dolores Cannon was one of the first people in the 1960s to kind of come up with the concept of using hypnosis for past life regression. And all her followers, like, she's passed away, Dolores Cannon, but all her followers had this like really large Facebook group that I'm a part of, but more as an observer now than a participant. And a lot of them are kind of fueling this concept that reincarnation is a trap. Don't go to the light. If someone says, go to the light when you're dying, then don't go to the light. So basically, you're staying earthbound. You're staying stuck. And my thoughts on that are like reincarnation in every different spiritual discipline, including Christianity, before they took it out of the Bible. Back in Constantine, who took it out of the Bible, like the 1400s. Every spiritual belief system believes in reincarnation. Mm-hmm. And I feel that it is an incredibly important part of the soul's journey. Now, you might not reincarnate back on Earth. You might reincarnate on a different planet or a different, solar system or a different universe. But I personally think our souls keep on reincarnating. When we're done on the 3D level, we keep reincarnating in the higher levels till eventually we become one with source, universal mind, whatever you want to call it. So that's to answer her question, I believe that's a toxic New Age concept. And I don't have much good to say about New Age beliefs. I think a lot of them are very toxic, disempowering, toxic positivity, people who pick and choose what they want from other spiritual traditions and whitewash it. Okay. So that's I think a very toxic New Age concept that I've seen around the past couple of years.
Okay, well, thank you for the answer for that. Okay. Here we go. How do you undertake, pun intended, your mediumship? Like, explain the process of mediumship or a seance.
I love by the way, I loved all your questions. When you sent them to me, I was like, these are awesome. I think people think it's harder than it really is. You do not need, and this is once again my opinion, and I want to preface this by like, I didn't believe in any of this stuff back in, I was very curious about witchcraft and witchy stuff and the occult and all that in my teens, but then in my 20s, I didn't believe in any of this. I was an atheist. I believed when you died, the lights went out. I thought like psychics and mediums, growing up with Miss Cleo on TV, like that's all bullshit. I don't believe in any of that kind of stuff. Until I had some unexplainable experiences that I had to reframe the way that I looked at the world. Mm-hmm. My experiences challenged my world belief. So I absolutely believe in this kind of stuff now. So if I can do this, anyone can do it because I didn't believe in any of this. It's not as hard as people think it is. I don't think you need to do any special spell work. I don't think you need a photograph or an object of the loved one. I think they want to communicate. I think they're always there. It's just like picking up a telephone. All you got to do is pick up the telephone, have the intent, who am I calling, pick up the telephone and dial. All you need to do is just think of them and they're there. And once again, that's going to go back to what I think, how people don't have enough confidence in themselves with their psychic abilities. They doubt themselves. They think they're making it up. So I think people, when they have strong self-esteem and confidence and believe in themselves, I think automatically their psychic and mediumship abilities get stronger. So I literally just have to think of someone and I can see them and communicate with them.
So my process, strangers as well.
It's a lot easier for me to communicate with my own loved ones that way, but yes, strangers. All I need to know is a name. Pictures can be helpful. Not to say, it really is not that difficult. I don't think it is. Like I said, I largely think it's intent and then just belief in yourself.
Jewel Howard asks,
yeah, these are
you ghost hunt and have you experienced incidents that are reruns?
Yes. Oh, I love it. I love this question. Yes, I have all the paranormal tools. In fact, I love to use them during seances and during mediumship because it's not like I need it. But I feel like when people, like, I don't feel like I need to use cards and tarot cards to do readings either. It's more for the other person. like when they have like a visual confirmation, I feel like they believe it more, they believe it better. But like I like using the paranormal tools, like EMF meter, spirit candle, metaphysical, like the paranormal music box. I like using those because people, when they get the little visual responses, they're like, okay, this is real. She's not just making this up. But yeah, I've experienced a lot of imprints. I always happen to live in haunted homes, and now I'm really starting to wonder if they're haunted or if I have brought them here. One of my last offices was in a 3-story, very extremely haunted building, and there was a large imprint there. Like, as a psychologist, most of my clients are psychics and mediums and witches and shamans. In fact, I don't really have any mundane clients because I kind of advertise myself as like a psychologist for the metaphysical or for the paranormal. And one of my office buildings, right in front of the woman's bathroom, everyone was like, what's going on by the bathroom? That was where it used to be an old warehouse. That's where they would punch in for the day and then punch out. So you would get imprints of spirits walking back and forth, because they're punching in, punching out. So yeah, I get imprints. In fact, I think a lot, or I've experienced imprints, to answer her question. In fact, I think a lot of hauntings are imprints and just memories of things that have happened. Not necessarily like a spirit there, but just a memory.
So I'm a believer because this house that I'm in right now is super haunted, and the people that lived here a long time ago spoke the Czech language, Czechoslovakian.
Ooh.
I don't speak it, okay, but I
Yeah.
speaking it, and I have a friend that does speak Czechoslovak or did speak Czech language, and he heard them and understood them. They were talking about food. So
Nice.
they had a lot of recipe books in Czech. So that made, I'm a believer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just also just have people show up, but I have to be connected somehow. So
Yeah.
when you do mediumship for other people, how do you go about doing that?
I like to do seances for a lot of reasons. I just like, as a psychologist, especially when I worked in like the addiction setting, I liked group settings because I think people learn from each other. And I think people think they're so, how am I going to say this without sounding stupid? I think some people think they're so special. Oh, look at me. Woe is me. I have all these problems. No one else does. And like in terms of like recovery or mental health, but then that same thing can be applied to spiritual. People are like, oh, I have these abilities, no one else does, I'm weird. Or people are like, oh, I can't do this, but she can do it. So I like to do for mediumship seances in group settings because I think people learn from each other. I also think just having a large number of people, I'm not talking like 100 people, but like 10 people or so can raise the energy. I think it's very important that everyone's a believer, 100%, because if you have one person that's kind of wishy-washy or kind of a disbeliever, it's going to completely throw the whole energy off, and all sorts of weird stuff can happen. And, maybe not the energies you want to talk to can be, present when someone's a disbeliever. But with mediumship, I love doing group things in group settings, like gallery readings and seances and so forth.
That's nifty. Can you walk us through the process a little bit of a seance for somebody that never seen one before?
So I think a seance is different than, at least to me, my definition of a seance is different than a gallery reading. So a gallery reading, if no one's ever been to one before, is you can also, like, famous mediums like John Edwards will do like gallery readings in which a large amount of people come and there's just one person picking up on messages and passing it along. The way I do seances is everyone's there with a purpose. Everyone participates. Everyone raises the energy. Everyone invites a spirit in that they want to talk to. So once again, intent is everything. So having a guest list. And a guest list, 2 guest lists, like a guest list of the living and a guest list of the dead. So who do you want to come? Once again, making sure everyone's a believer, everyone's on the same page. But then who do they want to talk to in spirit? Who do they want to invite? I think would be like the first step. So having a guest list, planning your guest list. creating a spirit-friendly environment, like burning incense and having candles burning, having crystals, that kind of stuff that might attract spirits. And then protecting yourself as an individual, but then as a group. And you don't want to like protect yourself so much that nothing comes through, but it is very important to protect yourself. So have everyone like bubble themselves, or, put a cloak of protection around them. And then like I'll cast a circle. So then the whole group is protected, and encourage everyone, like, don't leave the circle once we get started, and, try to all stay here and stay present, and then leave when we're all done. And then like open the door, or like pick up the telephone to make the phone call. Okay. Like and I don't want to say the veil is open, because to me, the veil is always open. The veil is illusion. I just think the veil really is the veil of illusion. I think people always have access to the spirit world, but it's more like opening the door. Okay. Now you can come. And sometimes it's kind of like my job as running the seance is like, okay, kind of like a circus wrangler. Okay, like settle down. It's not your time to talk, spirit. Because sometimes it'll turn into like a party where all these spirits come at once, and then they're all excited and they all want to talk. So you almost kind of have to be a director in the little orchestra and like take turns. Okay, we're going to start here. I like to go in a circle. I like everyone to participate. So it's not a gallery reading. I'm not passing the messages along for everyone. Everyone is taking turns. Like, what do you see? What do you feel? Are you hearing any messages? Because like I said, we all know everyone has psychic abilities. Like I said, I like to use tools, paranormal tools during the seance, like EMF readers, spirit candles. I want to get a polter pod after watching the Ghost Hunters episode Christian Day was on. I want to get some of those tools that they use.
Don't give me spoilers, because I still haven't seen it. I'm very
okay.
rural.
I won't say anymore.
Yeah, I'm in a very rural environment, so I have to wait until I can get it. So
okay.
I'm just so excited to see this. So
yeah, it was a great episode. I'm just in love with the tools that they use. Like, and I've watched Ghost Hunters since when they started till now, and just their evolution of the tools they use. So I like to use tools, but I also like to use spiritual tools. Especially, I call them training wheels, until people get a little bit more confident, like pendulums, Ouija boards, tarot cards. I love using Kanzari cards. So they're kind of like Ouija board, but in an oracle cards setting. Those are amazing for seances. So people can use these tools. It's okay until they become more confident. And then I think you can't let it go on forever. You kind of got to keep on track. So, okay, you get 10 minutes to talk. You get 10 minutes to talk. And there's always usually one spirit that comes in. It's usually my grandma. So my grandma, you can't come. This is not for me today. But a very dominant spirit who comes in and like wants to talk over everyone. So my job as a facilitator is to keep all the ghosts in check. And then,
Toastmasters for ghosts.
Yes. It totally is. Calm down now. You already talked. It's not your turn. And then wrapping it up, thanking everyone, giving lots of gratitude. I do encourage everyone when they're done to give a little offering to their loved ones that came through. And then closing the door. Okay, the seance is now done. Go back to where you came from. Thank you very much. So kind of like my itinerary for a seance.
Right. As a psychologist, do you ever have to counsel ghosts?
Yes.
Of course, I know you counsel the loved ones who are left behind who may be grieving. Do you ever have to counsel the ghosts?
Yes. So that fits into like the Death Walker role. So why are you still with your family? Why are you still bugging them? Because sometimes hauntings are really the loved one, and I use haunting loosely. Is the ghost like, why are you still here? Like some ghosts, I think we retain our personality after we die. So if people are abusive or controlling or narcissistic in this lifetime, they'll be that way. They retain a lot of those elements as a ghost. So I don't want to say scolding some of the ghosts, but yeah, they need counseling. But ultimately, the counseling is very short term, like maybe one session, because they need to move on. So yeah, I counsel ghosts.
Cool. Uncle
And yes,
Fred, your
people
spirit
do come
is
to their funerals. Before anyone asks that question, yes, spirits, because I work at a cemetery, spirits do come to their funerals, and they're very present.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Jamie Lynn Denton asks, I have seen
Yes.
this episode and it was very, very good.
It was
100%.
very good.
I'm looking forward to that still. Okay, so as a medium, what is your most difficult task and what is your most rewarding task?
Most difficult, being honest, it's draining. I'm like perpetual, and I feel like called to do this. Like, this is my reason for existing. This is my purpose in life. You can't run away from it because you're going to keep encountering it until you just embrace it and give in. It's very draining. I'm like perpetually tired. My Fitbit, when I wake up in the morning, says, "Yay, good job! You have a good high energy level. You slept good." But I'm tired. It's draining. Like, I work with spirits and in death care every single day, Monday through 7 days a week, and it's tired. It's draining. I often do myself have spirits like hitchhikers that follow me home, that come to my house. So I worked very hard on protection and clearing, but I still have spirits that attach to me and drain me. So a lot like in the movie Ghost with Whoopi Goldberg and how they're all like lining up. Yeah. So
that really happens.
yeah, it does. I do. I had a reading with a medium myself last weekend, and she's like, "Before I even saw you, I saw the spirits that are attached to you coming." I was like, "Oh shit!" So that's the most difficult thing for me.
The most rewarding. What's the most rewarding?
Passing along the message to someone who was a disbeliever or kind of on the fence, and they're like, "Okay, there's no way you're making that up." Okay. Mm-hmm. That's to me extremely rewarding. Yeah, it kind of is a little, I'm not going to lie, on your ego, like, yeah, I pass it along, or I like, they believe me, but just for them, when a non-believer kind of becomes a believer, or at least a partial believer, I think that is very rewarding.
I see from your bio that you work primarily with death entities, or chthonic, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, entities and deities. So what are some of the underworld deities whom you work with?
So since I love plants and I love death, Persephone, I don't think it's any surprise to anyone who knows about Persephone, is my patron goddess. Yeah, I love Persephone. I am definitely her servant. Hecate, of course, she works very closely with Persephone, but like Hecate's hoard and all the energies connected to Hecate, not just Hecate, but everything she represents. Oya, I work with Oya as a guardian of cemeteries. I work with Hel from the Norse pantheon, Santa Muerte. In fact, I got married on the Day of the Dead. So I love Santa Muerte. A newer one that has kind of become interested in me is Nephthys, Isis's sister from the Egyptian pantheon. She's more of a funerary and grief goddess. So she's kind of been like, "Hey, what's going on?" So she's one I'm looking forward to building a relationship with. Then I also work, I don't know if I would consider these like underworld deities, but more maybe kind of associated with death, like the Morrigan and Freya. Yeah, I've been told the other day that I spend a little too much time focused on death and dying and in the underworld. So I'm looking forward to spring so I can focus a little bit more on life and plants and that sort of stuff. But yeah.
Well, that's a good segue about your gardening aspect.
Yes.
I'm a homesteader, so this is of particular interest to me. So I'd like to know a little bit about your herbalism, heirloom gardening. For viewers who might not know, is preserving species that might have gone extinct if somebody didn't cultivate them. But I want to know especially about Gothic gardening, graveyard gardening, and gardening for the dead.
Oh, I could talk about this forever. In fact, that will be my first book coming out, Gardens for Ghosts. So
Wow.
that was, it's based on my WitchCon presentation, not this year, but in 2024. I did, my presentation was on gardening for the dead, for having gardens for death deities, gardens for grief, gardens for funerals, and all that sort of stuff. So that will be my book, hopefully coming out later this year. So Gothic gardening is where my heart and soul. So I have I have a huge Gothic garden outside. So Gothic garden is a throwback to the Victorian era. So in the Victorian era, they didn't have TV and radio and all that like we do. So, and they were already obsessed with death. And, they were surrounded by death. So we still didn't have modern medicine. People went to hospitals, like disease-ridden holes where people died. People started planning their death from a young age because they had tuberculosis, consumption, like they had a lot of diseases. So a lot of people died, and people died, sometimes quite young. They ran out of room in the cemeteries to bury all the dead. So then they started burying the dead in the public gardens.
Oh.
So Gothic gardening, to me, true Gothic gardening, a lot of people are like, oh, it's just black plants. Well, that's part of it. And that's why my side note, people do so many things and don't even realize what it's really about or the origin. They're just like, oh, Gothic gardening is black plants. No, it's a throwback to the Victorian era in which they had to bury their dead in the gardens because they ran out of room. So it's Gothic gardening is partially that. It's also the gardens at that time, were a form of entertainment for the Victorians. More people at that time started to garden at home instead of fancy rich people just having gardens because gardening became more accessible. So the way that they would entertain themselves was with big, bold gardening. So Gothic gardening to me is a throwback to the Victorian era, big, bold gardens with really, vibrant colors that represent death. So black, purple, burgundy, gray, often, or plants that are smell or have weird textures are Gothic gardening. And then having like Gothic elements like gargoyles and leaving plants, like dead parts of plants and tree stumps, having like bats and solar lights, like a lot of the decor, I think really makes a Gothic garden like a Gothic garden. So it's a throwback to the Victorian era.
It makes me think of also a lot of these plants smell nice, like lilacs. There was always lilacs in the cemetery because in the Victorian times, especially when we didn't have the embalming technology we have now, it just didn't smell very good. So they had these beautiful flowers to help the living adjust to the smell.
Yep. That's why Holly started having like bouquets and casket sprays and funerals, especially lilies. So working in the death care industry, you will always find lilies in a funeral flower arrangement because a really powerful smell covers up death.
Right. Gladiolus.
Yes. Yep. Gladiolas, delphinium, lilies. Those are always.
So with your herbalism, do you get into like growing bane plants at all?
Oh, yes. I have a large poison garden outside. I do teach poison gardening classes. Like, I think that is a wonderful way to ward your house. Poisonous plants are protective. So I love teaching about the protective powers of poisonous plants. So like right now I try to have almost every poisonous plant in my garden. I accidentally poisoned myself last year. Yes. Wear gloves when you are working with your baneful plants. I was growing ricin, and leaf was not looking so good, so I broke the leaf off with my bare hands and got the juices all over me, and my arm went numb, and I was like, oh my god, I poisoned myself. So so rice, yes, hazards of the trade, yes, don't be like me. when I
Denton says, I was just reading about Gothic gardening. How cool.
check out my podcast. So my podcast I started during COVID. My podcast, I used to record episodes like every 2 weeks. So I've gotten a little busy and haven't recorded as often, but my podcast is about Gothic gardening, herbalism, seances, ghost spirits, like all wrapped in one, because I think nothing illustrates the cycle of life and death better than plants.
Mm-hmm.
Like they bloom, they die, they are reborn again in the springtime. So
and that podcast is called Garden Goth.
And it's on Spotify. Yep, it's called Garden Goth and it's on Spotify.
Nice. Okay, I have a pretty big garden. If you look at my Facebook page, you can see it from last year. And it's primarily about food, but I have a few Bane plants, and some of them just kind of sneak into my garden. Like the black nightshade really likes the tomatoes.
Yes.
Thalassia goes, nerdy plant witches unite.
Yes. Yes. Herbalism and plants will always be my primary form of witchcraft or healing. Always.
We've got about 15 minutes left. So we want to find out about your classes that you're presenting in HexFest in August. And let me remind everybody, it's August. When? It is August 8th through 10th of this year. And you can sign up now to attend. And it's an in-person event in beautiful New Orleans. So the classes that Dr. Christina are going to be presenting are an exploration of the death card in the tarot, death walking, which you've explained a little bit to us, and psychomantium. Did I say that?
Yep, very good.
Which is scrying to communicate with the dead. So can you tell us a little bit about your classes?
It shouldn't be any surprise that the classes are all about death. So the death card, I first of all like the way I teach tarot throughout your tarot books. You're just regurgitating stuff that other people are saying about that card. Sometimes I find people who create not the Rider Waite, but people who make like their own tarot decks don't necessarily understand tarot. So throw out your tarot decks. It's really about the artwork. So I used to be an art docent at a world-renowned art center, and a lot of the techniques I learned as a docent, like helping people understand art, interpret art, because I believe art has no meaning until you, the viewer, give it meaning. So I apply that to tarot cards. Like, look at the art. What do you see? What do you feel in the space? Put yourself in the card. Interact in the card. How does it feel in there? What do you smell? What do you see? What do you feel? So my exploration, actually all the classes will have a journey or a guided meditation as part of it. But in the death card class, the death card class, we're going to go inside the death card through a guided meditation journey, and you're going to experience the card from the inside out. But then also looking at like the symbolism and the colors and the hidden things in the card. Because I think besides the Tower card, a lot of people are scared of the death card. They automatically think, I'm going to die.
Right.
No, it doesn't mean that. It means something is dying. Like the Tower is like something forced externally. The death card is like something natural. It's like a natural progression, a natural like death and rebirth or renewal. So we're going to, really dive deep into the death card and have people interpret it based on what they see, what they feel, how they experience the card. Bring your tarot cards, especially I want to look at, I have tarot cards everywhere. So I'm going to pick out all the death cards of all my tarot, and we're going to look at what do they all have in common? What do you see when you look at all these cards? Like what do they have in common? So I'm super excited about that class, just deep diving into one card. And then the
death walking.
Yeah, so the death walking, that will involve, I'll teach you more about death walking. So I think a large part of some things a death doula can do, particularly a death walker, is things to help prevent disembodied souls and hauntings in the first place. And that is doing that. So we'll talk about things death walkers can do before people die, so they don't become ghosts and they don't become hauntings, is life reviews and working on forgiveness and that sort of stuff. So I'll talk about things we can do to prevent hauntings in the first place while they're still alive. I talk about all the reasons why ghosts do become a haunted or disembodied or earthbound, and some of those we already talked about. I think one often when you see like movies, you'll see like, oh, everything's like always about a kid or a child. Well, children often when they pass away can become, disembodied or earthbound because they don't have an understanding of death like we do. So they get stuck or they get earthbound. So we'll talk about why, the different kinds of spirits that get earthbound. And then I'll teach you different death walking techniques, like different journeying techniques. Because I know in shamanism, a lot of people are like, oh, let's go up and down the world tree. Well, that's not for everyone. So I'll teach you different techniques to like enter the spirit world, but then pack your bags. I'll take you to the spirit world on a journey. And then, we'll do a little bit of work there. I'm super excited about all this. Then the psychomantium, I'm excited about everything. So that is actually based on Greek mythology, but like revamping a more modernization of it. So Temple of Hades and Persephone, people would go there into the cave and they'd have big cauldrons of water in which they would, in a very dim, obviously you're in a cave, so a very dim setting lit by candles, look into the cauldron and use, rudimentary forms of scrying in which they would communicate with their loved ones through like their faces and apparitions and images appearing in the water. Well, a psychomantium is based on that concept. Raymond Moody, I believe, was a psychologist back in the 1970s who kind of took that concept and used it as a tool for grief and loss to communicate with spirits. So a psychomantium is using a mirror. It's a form of scrying using a mirror in a dark room. And you tilt it such a way, and then you use it to communicate with spirits. So in that class, I'll go over like the history based in Greek mythology, and I'll go over Raymond Moody's work. And then I'll have mirrors, but if you have even like a little compact mirror, a little mirror, bring along with you to that class, because we'll turn all the lights off and do some psychomantium work. Because I think it's so, once again, I do a grief group, I host a grief group, and I think being able to communicate with spirit yourself is a really large component of healing from grief. So that's what that class is all about.
You mentioned going through water and scrying with water.
Yeah.
In the Greek pantheon and our Celtic pantheon, the way to the underworld is through water.
Yes.
It's often seen as a castle under the water, or Aran, the death god's realm, is under the water. So that would be a kind of cool way to travel to go talk to people.
That is a way to death walk and enter the underworld, like you're saying.
Is there anything else that you would like to add and tell us about your work, yourself, your gardens, and HexFest?
So please come to HexFest. I want to say thank you so much to Christian Day and Brian Kane for involving me in their events. Thank you very, very much. I'm so appreciative. So appreciative. Just amazing people for the community. They've just been big supporters. So thank you so very much. Check out my podcast, Garden Goth, on Spotify. Check out the Gray Paranormal magazine by Gray House Publishing. I have 2 columns in there every edition, I guess, of a magazine. I have one all about the baneful poisonous plants, one column. My latest one was about hellebore, which is my favorite plant in the whole world. And then I have another column in that magazine, every edition, on different funeral and cemetery stigmas or superstitions.
Right.
So I've written about like headstones. No, headstones didn't originate to mark who's in the grave. They marked to keep them in the grave. So it's fun going over the different superstitions a lot of them started in the Victorian era, and we just keep up with them. So check out the Gray Paranormal magazine. Check out my website, mindsoulandself.com. I do, facilitate funerals. I do death doula work through my business. I do a monthly full moon group called Lunacy. The next one's on Monday. I have hundreds of online downloadable classes on my website, and then I do see people individually. So I work at the cemetery full time, and then my when I come home at night on the weekends, I see clients and teach classes. So.
And your book is coming out hopefully later this
It's
year.
supposed to come out around October, Halloween time.
Perfect. Gardens for Ghosts. Who is the publisher?
Gray House Publishing.
Okay.
So it's a small Erica Block. She is a publisher. She's award-winning publisher who's worked in the industry for 25 years. And I think last year she started her own publishing company. So it's a small independent publishing company called Gray House Publishing.
Okay. Well, we thank you so much, Dr. Christina,
Yay!
coming to visit with us on Festival Fun and our special segment all about HexFest in New Orleans. It's coming up August 8th through 10th of this year. So register now and go and be part of the learning and the experience and the fun. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff too.
Yes. I can't wait for that riverboat ride. That's going to be the whole highlight.
I've heard that they're going to go and visit some of the graveyards down there in New Orleans. And
I will be there.
Are you going to be a part of WitchCon next year?
Yes. So my class for WitchCon is also on death and dying. Woo, so surprised there. I'm doing a class on death astrology charts. So a lot of people are familiar with birth charts, but I'm going to cover death charts, looking at when someone passes away.
Yeah, that's something that isn't done much. So that's interesting
I don't think anyone else does it.
Yeah, that's something really unique.
So I'm very excited.
Cool. Yeah. And are you going to be part of the spectral evidence?
I talked to Christian ahead of time about my class ideas, and I submitted. So my class hopefully will be on dreaming the dead. So dream work as a way to communicate with spirit.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to kind of take an opposite track of if you have entities in your house that are being a little intrusive, and you don't mind them there, but you do mind them peeking in on you in the shower. Uncle Ray, could you have some boundaries here? Or banishing the ones that are kind of icky.
Yep.
And I don't mean gently guiding them to the underworld. I mean, you're icky, go away. So that's what mine's going to be about.
Nice.
So
I will be there.
Thank you. That's going to be coming out in this October from the 3rd to the 5th. It's the first weekend in October. Like WitchCon, it's going to be online, and it's also facilitated by Warlocks Incorporated, Christian Day, and Brian Kane, who've done so much to bring all these wonderful speakers and teachers to the public. And you can join us online. You don't have to travel. But if you do want to go to if you do want to go to HexFest, that's a great traveling experience.
Yes.
So we hope that many of us can all go and join.
So looking forward to it. Yeah, and if anyone watching, friend me on Facebook or follow me on Instagram.
You seized up there for a minute. Could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, if anyone watching, feel free to friend me on Facebook or follow me on Instagram.
Will do. You have to look at all my fart jokes and garden stuff.
Yes, I'm all about that.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Christina. We really appreciate you being here.
I very much appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. And thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in. This is Witchcraft TV and the Festival Fun Show. So I don't know where Harold went, if he wants to do that.
No, I'm right here. I appreciate you. Come on, Christine. Make sure y'all register for that HexFest for August 8th and 10th. And make sure you keep it right here on www.witchcrafttv.online, where we are a fair representation of all pagan, witch, and magic paths. Merry part for now. Thank you so much, Christine.
Merry part.
Thank you.
Good night.